A very warm welcome to the show. Now, defeated Kenyan presidential candidate Raila Odinga has rejected the results of the election, saying that the figures announced on Monday were, quote, null and void, and accused the Electoral Commission chairman Wafula Chebukati of bullying. Mr. Odinga accused the head of the electoral body of a blatant disregard of the constitution, making his remarks in front of supporters in the capital, Nairobi. Earlier on Tuesday, he said that there was neither a legally elected winner nor a president-elect, quote. Now, the 77-year-old long-time opposition leader was running for president for the 5th time. He has challenged the results in the previous 2 elections, including successfully in 2017. Odinga accused Chebukati of gross impunity, saying his team will pursue all legal options. He called his declaration a major setback to Kenya's democracy that could trigger a political crisis. Well, Arise East Africa correspondent Mark Bichachi spoke earlier on the developments in that country and what it means in the days ahead. All right, I'm being told that's not available at the moment. Well, to discuss the outcome of the Kenyan election, we have Njoku Emmanuel right here joining me in the studio. He's the Director of Democracy and Governance at Connected Development, or CODE, which is a civil society organization with interests in electoral matters. And we also have joining us in our Lagos studio, Chude, who is an African affairs analyst. Thank you so much, Achike, for joining us. And I'll start with you here, Emmanuel. What do you make of Raila Odinga's rejection of this election? You were in Kenya, you monitored the elections. How was it like? And when you hear Raila Odinga rejecting the outcome of the polls, what comes to your mind?
Well, I was expecting that. And I was expecting this because, as you are aware, this is his 5th time he's running for this office, and at every point in time when he has run for this office, he has rejected the polls. In 2017, he rejected the polls and as such went to court and was able to overturn the election for them, which caused them to have the second election in 2017. So I was expecting this. Frankly, for me, the election in itself was civil, was orderly, polls opened earlier. The elections was good. Now, something happened after the elections. Tabulation, which they call tallying, started happening. And a lot of media houses were doing their parallel tabulation. So some media houses that have interest with Raila were giving the numbers to show that Raila was leading, while some other media houses that had their interest and bias for Ruto were. So, but whichever way, it was a very close run. 50, 30, 40, 50,000 difference of votes with each of them leading. At some point, the IEBC, which is the INEC chairman, asked that media houses should stop doing parallel tabulation as they agreed before the election. And at that point, media houses had already tabulated about 95% of the votes. But that's not verified. Eventually, it is the results that will be verified by the IEBC. That's what will be brought to the public to see. So beyond all of these things, we can no longer say exactly what happened and the point when they stopped media houses from doing parallel tabulation to the point where the IEBC now put out their own verified results out there. But beyond this, I think the election was good, even though this is the lowest that they've ever seen in their voter turnout in Kenyan elections. They had a voter turnout of 65%. In Kenya, they usually, in the past elections in 2017, they had as high as 75%. In 2013, they had as high as 80% voter turnout. But in this particular election, the voter turnout was really low, considerably low, which is about 14 million plus votes. So, but beyond that, the election was civil, the election was orderly. In
the areas you monitored?
In the area, so we have a partner in Kenya, Ushahidi, and they have a platform where citizens report from across polling units. So we were in a situation where we've seen the election as it was happening. And beyond, there were a few negative events, but these few negative events cannot take away much of the positive events which, for me, defines the election.
Okay. And I come to you, Achike. What do you make of the controversial statement by Raila Odinga while rejecting it, saying that everything that's been declared is null and void? I mean, he was just short of just using some very, very harsh words against Chebukati, who is the IEBC chairman. We've seen 4 of the 7 members of the IEBC rejecting the outcome of the result. And the controversy here is that when they do the final tally, by the time you see what Ruto got, what Odinga got, what Njoku and all others, what they got, you see it ends with 100.01%. And so it's been controversial. And the question is, did the IEBC get its mathematics right?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Achike. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Well, obviously, people's moods are being dampened. You know, after this election, the fact that it was largely devoid of violence, there was this feel-good factor that has lasted till now, that this time around, this election was not mad with so much violence, acts of violence. Don't forget that in 2012, over 1,000 people were killed in the aftermath of the election that brought Kenyatta to power. And then in 2017, about 100 people were killed. And it was as a result of this violence that the former president, the outgoing president, and Ruto, his vice, were brought before the International Criminal Court, the ICC, a case that was later dismissed by the ICC. So going into this election, and we didn't have so much the kind of tension that leads to outright violence. And then the actual conduct of the election itself, that was relatively peaceful. A lot of people felt good about the outcome. And then, there was this feeling that it appears that the Kenyans are getting it right. But the spanner was thrown into the works by the resignation of key members, 4 out of 7 members of the Electoral Commission. So that in itself put a question on the credibility of the entire election itself. If the people who actually conducted that election are now questioning the credibility of the election itself, it's a very big issue. Obviously, we are seeing partisanship across the board. And I think that this is what it is on the strength of this defection by these 4 members of the IEBC. It is that has given Raila Odinga the gumption to contest the validity of the election in the very first place. And you cannot have an election. It's strange, even in the African context, where you have a lot of dictators or African strongmen determining the outcome of elections. You cannot have a process. We don't usually have a process where the very people who conducted the election are the ones coming out to say that the result declared for something that they themselves conducted is suspicious and is not valid. And so this is the major. In fact, if for whatever it is that Raila Odinga is claiming, this is the base on which he's making his claims. And it's unfortunate that we're seeing a novelty in this particular instance. But again, like Njoku said there in the studio, this is not the first time Raila Odinga is disagreeing with the electoral process. In the very last time around, he did the same thing. And in an unprecedented manner, the Supreme Court annulled that election in which they had a sitting president in place. And that was a novelty, and a lot of Africans hailed the decision of the Supreme Court at that particular point in time. So it's unfortunate that it would appear that we are back to the same scenario.
Okay, and I just want to quote Odinga's words here. He actually said that for avoidance of that, I want to repeat, we totally and without reservation reject the presidential results announced yesterday by Mr. Chebukati, and he also accused him of bullying. Now, in an electoral commission of 7 persons and 3 are declaring the results, that's the chairman and 2 others, and then 4 are dissenting. Shouldn't it be a matter of majority calling the shots? Why does it look like the chairman seems to actually have an overwhelming influence over the decision of the declaration of the election result? Go ahead, Achike.
Yeah, is that for me?
Yes, I mean for you.
Okay, good. Well, I think the person that is empowered to make that declaration is the IEBC chairman. I think he has a constitutional mandate. He is the chairman, And of course, you also know that you have the various different versions of the chairman in the county elections, in the provincial elections, where the head of the electoral body in those places is mandated constitutionally to make those announcements. So I think the right person has made the call. Now, the issue of whether, I mean, since you have more people, on the other side, and then you just have the chairman and 2 other people on his own side, whether that invalidates his pronouncement or the announcement of the result, I think that would be an issue, obviously, for the court, because as it is now, there's a provision that Raila Odinga, who feels disenchanted with the result of the election, has 7 days within which to write a petition, to petition the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court has 14 days to sit and deliberate and then decide on the next step of action, whether to validate this election or to invalidate it and conduct and ensure that new elections are conducted. So the fact that there are just 3 people on the side of the chairman, I do not think that is sufficient reason to invalidate what he has announced.
Okay, and I come back to you here. Do you agree with Hachike on this? I mean, 4 against 3. The 4 are saying that they are the majority in this instance, but the chairman says it's using his overwhelming influence as the chairman of IEBC to declare the results. So
beyond being the chairman of IEBC, so the law always states who the returning officer in the presidential election should be. And I think in the case of Nigeria, I think the INEC chairman is the returning officer. And I think it's similar because our electoral process and election day activities is almost the same thing with that of Kenya. So I want to believe that the IEBC chairman is the returning officer. And the law says the returning officer is the one who declares. So the other 3 members saying that they do not believe in the result does not in any way invalidate the result. So, but the good thing about Raila Odinga's speech where he refused to accept the result is at least because in the past, like he mentioned, post-election, most violence in elections in Kenya comes after the election because one of the parties, in most cases, consistently being Raila Odinga, rejecting the results. And the attitude with which he rejects the result is what causes the violence. But today, I think from the way I watched him and how he spoke, so before the election, there was this consensus amongst the political elites to ensure that there is peace in this election. Even post-election, there must be peace. Because I understood that they've not completely healed from the pains and the damages of the last post-election violence. Yes. So watching him speak and reject the result, at least he was calling for calm. He was appreciating his followers for being calm and asking them to continue to be calm and making them understand that he's going to take legal steps for him to restore the mandate, which he believes he lost.
Yeah, but if you see what these other 4 persons are saying, that, for example, the tally, William Ruto got 50.49% of the votes, Odinga got 48.85%, George Jakoya got 0.44%, and Mwara Wahiga got 0.23%. Now, when you add this total, it gives you 100.01%. So they are saying that the IBC chairman, whether he's returning officer or not, did not get his mathematics right.
Yeah, but it has been, the result has been declared. Yeah, frankly. So this is now a case for courts to handle. And the good thing about this election, and the good thing about election in Kenya, which I think Kenya, they've set the pace for elections in Africa, and Nigeria's election coming in 2023 is going to be a big election that will further, deepen this pace. The introduction of technology and the transparency that result transmission electronically and the result portal brings to bear in elections is very, very key in reducing the calm and tension that goes with elections.
Because citizens were monitoring what's going on.
Media houses, and every person running for office at this time, of course, should have a situation room where you are picking the results to know where. So I remember the Ekiti and Osun State election because it's literally the same thing, transmitting the EC8A to the result portal. In their own is from 34A. So these citizens and political parties are already doing their own parallel tabulation. So they already know who is leading or who is winning. So this case is a case of them going to court. And I think it's the court that can clearly decide whether what the 4, because other sources are saying that these 4 commissioners were recently appointed by the President Kenyatta Uhuru, and they are trying to, play the politics of Uhuru to try to, make a mess of the process. So, but when they go to court, these numbers will be brought, and these things are on the portal. And it will become clearer what happens in this election.
What do you think Nigeria has to learn? You were there, you monitored the elections and all of that. what are the ideals that you've seen which we can borrow into our electoral system? One of them is what we're already doing. And I've seen some organizations like yours and others doing parallel voter tabulation of votes when election is ongoing. What are those other key aspects that we can learn from the Kenyan election?
So let me say this. The Kenyan election and elections, they are very similar. The Kenyan election, they use beavers. They call it Kim kits, and we're using a beavers. They are doing electronic transmission of results. We are doing the same thing. In every voting point in Kenyan election, you are not supposed to have more than 700 persons in a polling voting point. Now, but beyond that, the differences I see in Kenyan elections, one, prisoners were able to vote in this election. People living in diaspora were able to vote using their ID cards, going to their country embassies, wherever they are. I think about 12 countries were able to vote in this election. Pictures were put in the ballot papers. So it's not enough to say you don't know the logo of the candidate, but the billboards all over the streets with their faces. When you come, you look for the faces and you can match it, and
which is what we don't do here. We just put only political party logos.
Which is what we don't do here. But so the similarities and the realities are different. Now in Nigeria, for instance, I do not think, in as much as everybody out of emotion and sentiments feels that we should put the pictures of these candidates on the ballots, but I do not think that can work right now in Nigeria. Our court judgments here come at very odd times. In the last FCT Council post-election, if you remember, the APC candidate, the Supreme Court decided who the candidate would be 2 days before the election. So if you do that in a general election, like in a presidential election, where we assume to have about 95 million people that will participate in the election, and a week or a month before election, PDP or the court says that this candidate is not the candidate, is this candidate. What happens? It will mess up.
What time do you have to start printing?
You cannot start printing and doing all of
new ballot papers.
There's one thing that also stands out in Kenyan elections is the timing of the election. Their polls opened by 6 a.m. and drags as far as 5 p.m. That's 11 hours. While in Nigeria here, our polls start by 8:30 a.m. and ends by 2:30 p.m. Now, putting the numbers together, in Kenya, a country of 54 million people, their voter register is 22.1 million people on the voter register. While in Nigeria, our voter register is 95, as is assumed to
be going to 95
and we are
million
looking at using just about 6 hours. And frankly, if you look at the turnaround time of the beavers to do the verification and one person to vote, it probably takes about 2 minutes for one person to vote. So if you look at the numbers clearly, if the beavers and the turnaround time for one person to vote takes 2 minutes, that means in an hour, it will be able to take only 30 persons to vote in a polling unit. So in the 6 hours that INEC is given, even though they are saying after 2:30, people on the queue can still vote. So in the 6 hours, it can only allow 180 persons to vote. But if, and I'm expecting and I'm hopeful, there's going to be serious voter turnout in Nigeria. I'm anticipating 50% voter turnout, more than we've ever seen before. The timing will cause tension in some places. So I will appeal to INEC to probably look into extending the voting time because of the numbers that we're anticipating in election.
That's a very good observation. And we just hope that the Electoral Commission is listening. And I come back to you, Achike. Let's talk about the politics of this Kenya election and how William Ruto has displaced these two strong political families. And of course, you know that Odinga was the first vice president of the country and is the father of Raila Odinga. And of course, Jomo Kenyatta was the first president of Kenya and of course the father of Uhuru Kenyatta. So when these two families came together to support each other to deliver Raila Odinga, a lot of people had thought, Ruto would just be thrown off despite being deputy president of the country. But we're seeing him coming from behind to displace these two families. What do you make of that politics?
Yeah, I think it is exceedingly very significant, and it should be a lesson to a lot of other people, especially, in countries where you have either oligarchies, you have, hegemonies, and the dynasties. There's always that possibility that if you have the right kind of candidate who is able to make the right kind of appeal to the people, especially, in a society that is filled with all kinds of socio-economic, political contradictions, where the people have, subjected to all kinds of inhuman, what they would term maybe inhuman or inhumane treatment, the part of their politicians, where exclusion becomes the order of the day and poverty is the norm. It tends to give the people a completely different perception, about the kind of politics that should be played in their country to liberate them. And so you have a situation where it would appear that Ruto understood this. He's been vice president. He was vice president to Kenyatta, and then was left the government just a few months ago, about a year or two ago, and joined a new party. And then a lot of people felt that he was finished politically. But what did he do? He had the appeal. And he was able to appeal to the people and tell the people that he was one of them. In fact, it was more like, those who represented the dynasties and the hustler. He was the hustler. And in an economic and in a country that is filled with all kinds of socioeconomic contradictions, where a lot of people see themselves as hustlers, it was easy to identify with the politics of Ruto. And so the vast majority of people, a lot of them unemployed, a lot of them, looking for a meaning to the kind of lives that they are living, in their country, found it very easy to identify wholly with, Ruto. And so his politics was essentially the politics that the people liked. And that was why he was able to garner a lot of support, a lot of people. And then again, when you have dynasties like the dynasty, the Odinga dynasty and the Kenyatta dynasty, there's always this feeling of them versus us. So Ruto was us, and then it was them when you talk about the dynasties. And so I think it was easy to appeal to the people and then get the support of the people. And I think that more than any other thing, it was this that was able to swing this election in Ruto's favor.
Okay, as we try to round off this conversation now, do you see any similarities with Nigeria? And then, interestingly, President Uhuru Kenyatta has been quiet. What do you make of all of that? Go ahead.
Yeah, again, you talk of the use of beavers, and like Njoku is saying, it's more or less a lot of the things, the dynamics, electoral dynamics are similar to that of Nigeria. Only that he also said in a conversation I had with him before now that they also had to, resort to the use of, manual processes when the beavers machine failed. That has been ruled out in Nigerian election. And then again, the women participation in Kenya, it would say to a very large extent, we had a fall in the number of women that participated in general elections in 2019 from the high that we had in 2015. But you would also see that in Kenya, we had the bigger, more participation of women. Unfortunately, it would appear that the women need to do much more. The society needs to do much more to accept that women can also be involved in politics. And in that sense, I would say that Nigeria is far ahead of them, because a lot of these women were derided and mocked, and some of them were actually attacked, for daring to participate in the electoral process in their own country. I think we've gone beyond that, mercifully in Nigeria, where more and more women are beginning to participate. But still, it is an increase in terms of the participation, in terms of the number of people that are entering the parliament. From the 3 that we had, I think, in the last election in 2017, we now have about 9 women out of about 350 members of the assembly, which is still a far cry from what we have. Then we have 1 senator, and then most importantly, we have about 6 regional governors out of the 40-something or so regional governors that we have in Kenya. So obviously we need to have more women participate in the elections in their own country. We need, right now, there's no female governor. We've never had a female governor except the one we had by default in Anambra State. Etafia, if I remember, as a result of the crisis we had then. I think these are some of the similarities. Etiaba, thank you. So these are some of the similarities and the dissimilarities that we have between our elections and that of Kenya.
Okay. And just before I go, I want to ask you the question I asked him, secondly, which he didn't react to it, but I want you to react to it. We've seen President Uhuru Kenyatta just quiet without saying anything, though we all know that he supported Raila Odinga, had this emergency coalition that he built with Raila, and has been quiet about it. What do you make of that silence?
So frankly, for me, I'm surprised he's not saying anything. Maybe he's also shocked, because clearly, when Raila Odinga had that popular handshake with the president, there was this assumption that, it's game over. So this is a shock to the political elites. This is a shock to that political class. And it's a lesson for Nigeria coming back home. And this, I believe, has happened because of the deployment of technology in the election, because of the transparency that transmitting of election results brings to bear. And this should be
but
a
unfortunately, we have the courts now to decide the outcome of results. And the idea has always been to push away the courts so that the legitimacy from the people and the Electoral Commission will be accepted
but
by everyone.
we cannot also take away the role of the courts, just in case there has been an irregularity. It is now left for the court to look at the numbers and look at the votes that came in and be able to decide. So, so for me, I believe, and what stood out for me, and I must say this so that Nigerians very quickly, what stood out for me is the patriotism and the participation of citizens in Kenya. People, election started by 6 a.m. The weather was very cold, but as at 5:30 a.m., lots of people were on the queue, and they stayed on that queue the whole day till every single person voted. So that's a lesson for Nigerians. It's not enough to be excited about the election, and it's not enough to be on social media typing. But we need to, on the election day, come out, turn out, stay under that sun, stay under that rain, and vote. Because you know what? Our votes are going to count. Taken from where he stopped, the gaps I saw in the election day processes in Kenya, those gaps have already been tightened by electoral stakeholders and INEC in Nigeria, meaning that elections in 2023, I believe, is going to be credible. I believe the votes are going to count. And on that note, I ask Nigerians, please, that's your PVC. Do not carry it around on your wallet.
All right.
Keep it safe and use it on election day and make the changes.
And of course, we must thank you so much, Njoku Emmanuel, for joining us here. You are the Director of Democracy and Governance at Connected Development, or CODE. And of course, it's a civil society organization that has interest in electoral matters. And of course, our own Chude, who must thank you so much. Like the similarities I was saying earlier on, I just hope that people don't think that Ruto is coming out of the elites of the Kenyan political class, because there's that misconception. Ruto has been there right from 1992 when he's been playing this politics with all these people. So the feeling among some Nigerians that, look, we can always get someone coming out from nowhere to just win. It may be a long period of time before it happens, but political participation is very, very important, like you have said. So we must thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the show. See you some other time.